Bismillah Rahman Rahim. This is lecture number 7. The name of the paper is Criticism 1. Uh, the topic is Aristotle, and it is an introduction to Aristotle's Poetics. In this lecture, we will talk about his life and works, but quite briefly because these are not our main concern. Our main concern will be those items which normally are set in the paper. These are not. We will also discuss why poetics is sketchy. It is not explained, it is not elaborated. Why is it sketchy? Why doesn't it look like a book? What's the reason? And the general philosophy of Aristotle. This is what we'll discuss. These are the subtopics. But once again, I should remind you that these are not important from examination point of view, but of course you need to know a lot about Aristotle in order to understand what poetics is and the contents of poetics. This lecture is specifically for the students of BS English 5th semester GDC PABI, and it is also for those students whose colleges are affiliated with Abdul Wali Khan University. A little about his life, uh, the place of birth and the date of birth is given here. The most important thing here, which I want to focus on, is that his father was a physician. He was a doctor, the doctor of the Philip of Macedon, the king. And it was from his father that he took the scientific bent of mind. His mind was scientific, and his thoughts were scientific. He thought scientifically. That was because of this, that his father was a scientist, a physician. The second important thing is that he was Plato's pupil, Plato's student. He went to the academy where Plato used to teach, and he went there for 20 years in the beginning, just as a pupil, as a student, and later on as a teacher there. But he was there for 20 years. And Plato was also quite impressed with his intelligence, and he called him Nous, which means very intellectual, uh, the intellectual of the academy. So these are the two important things here, that his father was a physician, and from him he took the scientific bent of mind, and that he was Plato's student. He remained at his academy for 20 years, first as a student and then as a teacher. He taught there too. Um, then I'd like to tell you, and you might be interested in this, that his school, Aristotle's school, Aristotle's academy, he also had his own academy later on, was called Peripatetic School. And this word peripatetic meant traveling from place to place. This name was because of the fact that Aristotle's habit was of walking while giving instructions or while giving lectures. He did not give lectures in the lecture room like we do at colleges or at universities, but he gave lecture while he would walk in his garden. His students will follow him with their notebooks, and they would write whatever was said by Aristotle, and in this way they will make their own notes. So this is also, I think, an important idea to understand. I'm leaving all these out. You can read them for yourself. And even if you don't read them, it won't matter much, at least from the examination point of view. These words, the blackened part, these are the words of the king, Philip. King Philip was the father of Alexander the Great. And King Philip wanted that Aristotle should teach his son, Alexander the Great, and he gave a tribute to him in these words, and he wrote to him, "Be it known that to me a son is born, that my son is born." Philip says, "I'm thankful therefore to the gods, but not so much at the birth of the child as that he was born in thy time." Says he is thankful to the gods, but and it is not for this reason that the child was born, but it is also for this reason that the child was born in your time, in the time of Aristotle. So you see that honor is given to him. The king is writing a letter, and he says this, "For I hope that, trained and educated by thee, if you teach my son," he says, Philip, "he will prove himself worthy of us." So will then be educated in a proper way, and we will think that he was worthy of us and of succession to the throne, and that he would next become the king as well. And we would think that he is able to become the king because he would be your student then. Alexander's tribute was this, he himself said. This is something said by Alexander. He says, "To my father, I owe my life." That is, my life was given to me by my father. To Aristotle, the knowledge how to live worthily. The knowledge how to live worthily, how to be a good person, that was told and taught to me by Aristotle. So you can see a tribute is given. From here, you can understand how important he was and how intelligent he was, how knowledgeable he was. He was encyclopedic type of person, Aristotle, and wrote about logic, about metaphysics, about aesthetics, about politics, about psychology, and also biological sciences. Um, from He wrote logic, books on logic, books on physics, books on metaphysics, ethics, rhetoric, and poetics. And of course, poetics is included in your course, and about rhetorics as well. So you can see he wrote many things. As I said, I'm not interested in all these. I just want to give you an idea that he was a great philosopher, and he was born in Macedonia. People say that someone is the jack of all trades, but he was not the jack of all trades, he was the master of all trades. Encyclopedic person, as I said, and he had his own zoo, his own museum, his own botanical garden. So he knew botany, he knew zoology. And when Alexander was going on his conquests, and Alexander asked his teacher what he wanted from him, if any gift, he said, "When you go on your conquests and you go to different places and you find, let's say, a plant which is not here, or an animal which is not here, or a stone which is not found in Greece, then bring that to me." And as a result, he had his own zoo for the purpose of course, medical purposes, scientific purposes, and also a botanical garden because he wrote also about botany, about politics, logic, and all these. He also talks about mimesis, hematia, and catharsis. These are the terms which we will explain later on. However, these are quite controversial terms, especially catharsis, which he thinks is the purpose of drama or tragedy. Um, and these terms have been explained by other people because he left them unexplained. We'll talk about it a little later. Uh, as I said in the beginning, that we'll talk about poetic sketchiness. Why is poetic sketchy? Why is it not fully explained? And there are two main reasons. Number one reason is that these are the lecture notes of Aristotle himself. When a teacher wants to teach, he makes notes for himself so that it becomes easy for him to deliver his lectures. And these were the notes of Aristotle. He did not write it in the book form. These were the notes to be taught to the students, and these were teacher's note or lecture's note, and therefore they are sketchy because notes are not explained. Explanation comes from the teacher himself. The second reason is that these were the notes of his students that Aristotle would teach the students, as we said earlier, that he had a very big garden, a vast garden, and he would start walking. Students would follow him and would write whatever was said by him, and they uh, then would write those notes, and these notes were then collected. And actually, this poetics was the collection of the notes by his students, and therefore it is sketchy. So these are the two reasons. Number one, that they were lecture notes of Aristotle, and number two, that these were the notes taken by his students. Then there are problems in the poetics. For example, the first problem is that sometimes we are not sure about the meaning of words. Therefore, we need to look to the other books, for example, politics, in order to understand some words in the poetics. So we need to read the other books to come to know about those words and their meanings. This is one problem which we face while discussing the poetics. There is another problem that there are words which are left unexplained, that he did not explain them, and this creates a lot of problems because everybody has explained it in his own way. As a result, there are different commentaries on Aristotle's book, the Poetics, and these commentaries are various and we have various meanings. After this, we will talk a little about you can see I'm going quite quickly because these are not extremely important things, but of course, to understand Aristotle, they are quite helpful. We will talk now about the general philosophy of Aristotle. The general philosophy is that for him, man is a social animal, and that's why man lives in the society. This instinct of being a social animal is in him, in the man, and therefore he lives in the society. Otherwise, he would not have lived in the society. The second is that human being or man is a political animal, and that's why he has created different forms of governments and different political systems. So man is a political animal as well. And thirdly, that man is a worshipping animal. Um, that therefore man has created different religions and gods because he wants to worship, and he is a worshipping animal. Therefore, the next is, and this is important for us in the poetics as well, and his idea of imitation. For that also, it is important that man is imitative animal. That man imitates other people or other things, and as a result, he created art as an imitation or mimesis. All art is mimesis, all art is imitation. He took this from Plato, however, he gave it um, another color. He explained it in a different way, different than Plato. So man, he said, is imitative animal, and therefore he created art by imitating people, imitating their actions. Then he tells us that all these things discussed there, they were like organisms. organisms. For example, human being is an organism, and we as human beings have our infancy, our youth, our maturity, our decline, and then our death. So he says all this happened with literature, which is an imitative art, with religions. All this happened with the governments and with civilizations. So you can see that he thinks that these are organisms, and they are born, they have their infancy, their youth, their maturity, and their decline and death. So this is what he thinks, that these um, these ideas he mentioned are like organisms. He explains that civilization is also like an organism, just like man is an organism, and civilization are born, they have their youth, maturity, and death. And he had seen Egyptian civilization, which passed through all these things, the Mesopotamian civilization, and the Greek civilization. Um, he had seen these three. The same thing happened with our civilization as well. Um, our civilization was infant in the beginning. It started, and then its youth came. Empires were built, and its maturity was when knowledge spread. A lot of universities and libraries were made. People became very creative, but then slowly and gradually there was a decline and then death. So this is his idea, which can be seen happening all around us. He also thinks that Greek literature also passed through all these stages, that it was in the infancy, youth, maturity, decline, and then death. Uh, then his scientific bent of mind is also shown when he talks about the things first per genus, per differentia. Uh, how to give definition of definition. So he tells us, he gives the definition of definition per genus, per differentia, which means that first you should talk about the broader class to which something belongs, and then per differentia, that is, then you differentiate that thing from this broader class. So therefore, about the man, he says that the broader class of man is animal. Man is animal, but then those characteristics which differentiate it from the other animals is reasoning, and that it is an animal, but it is a rational animal. So his idea of definition, this is also important, because this is how he would define tragedy, and then he would talk about the different arts, and he will differentiate them from all those different arts. So that is then therefore important. This was just an introduction. The most important part will begin from here when we discuss Aristotle's theory of art and comparing this with Plato. Now, you know that in the beginning we discussed Plato's objections as we find them in his book 10 of the Republic. Four objections, and these objections were then given replies by Aristotle one by one. And today we did just the introduction to Aristotle, to his works, to his life, to the fact that poetics is sketchy, and that what was his general philosophy. So that's for now. Thank you and good luck.